Well, good morning, and thanks for joining us. I am joined today by Brian Smith, the Director of Compliance at Restaurant Accounting Services. Brian, thank you so much for joining us today. I know we've got a lot of information that we're looking to share with everyone today. So I know that we're going to be talking about accounting for PPP loan forgiveness and tax credits or tax deferrals under the FFCRA and CARES Act. And I know a lot of people are interested into this. So let's jump right into it. First question for you, Brian. Is there anything special about accounting for the PPP loan before it is forgiven?
Before it's forgiven, no. The loan is just recorded on the balance sheet like any other loan would be. So there's nothing special before it gets forgiven.
What if my loan is not forgiven at the end of the year? Will this impact my federal income tax return?
No, there's no issue here either. The loan will just stay on the balance sheet as a loan. There's no problem with that. There's going to be no income from the forgiveness of PPP because it hasn't been forgiven. And let me just say that even if there was income, it would be non-taxable. But the expenses that are paid for with the PPP loan, it will still be deductible at the end of the year. So that's a good change.
Okay, that is absolutely a great change. How is the loan recorded once it is forgiven?
Once it's forgiven, we zero it out on the balance sheet so that you don't see the loan, and then we move it to the P&L or income statement and put it under a non-taxable GL, income GL. This would be treated the same as, let's say, non-taxable interest from like a municipal bond investment or something like that. So it is income to the business, but it's just not taxable.
So that probably answers my next question. Is the forgiven amount of the PPP loan taxable?
The forgiven amount, no, that's the same. It is basically free money.
Got it. Now, are the expenses that were paid with forgiven PPP funds deductible on the federal income tax return?
Yeah, I already kind of gave that away, didn't I? I apologize.
Yeah.
Before the Consolidated Appropriations Act was passed, they were not deductible. But just a couple of weeks ago, we found out that they will be deductible on your year-end tax return. So that's a huge benefit for all businesses.
That is absolutely a huge benefit. Now, is the accounting for the tax credits claimed under the FFCRA and CARES Act any different?
It is not. Well, I should say it's a little different, yes. So under the FFCRA, which is the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, you like that long name, and then the CARES Act, which is the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Securities Act, the credit or the money received by the business is not taxable. However, the expenses that were used to claim that credit are not deductible for the credits under the FFCRA and CARES Act, which are your emergency paid sick leave, the Paid Family Medical Leave Act, and then the Employee Retention Tax Credit. There are some similarities, but then the difference would be the expenses are not deductible.
Okay, and how is the accounting handled for those tax credits?
The tax credit is handled the same as forgiven PPP loan and is not taxable, like I said, to the business. And the only difference then would be the deductible expenses, but of course those are separate. So I guess you could say that the accounting is very similar.
Okay. Now, is the accounting for the PPP second draw going to be any different than that or the first round?
No, thank goodness. The second draw that just came out with the passage of the new law is going to be exactly the same. So everything that we had in place for PPP first draw will be in place for PPP second draw, and it'll be very similar. So it'll be a lot easier. It won't be like building the airplane as we're flying this time.
All right, that's fantastic news. Now, if I have a forgiven PPP loan and I claim the employee retention tax credit, will the accounting be impacted by that?
Not on that either. Each is accounted for separately. However, I would like everyone to know that wages claimed as a forgivable payroll expense on your PPP forgiveness application, they are not eligible to be claimed as wages in regards to the employee retention credit. And that's for the both first and second draw.
Okay. So Brian, how is the employer deferred Social Security accounted for on the balance sheet?
The deferred employer Social Security is also a liability on the balance sheet, just like a loan or just like the normal liability from your payroll. However, we moved it from combining it with the normal payroll to a separate GL, and we put half of it in a GL that is due on the end of 2021 so that clients can see on their balance sheet what that payment will be at the end of 2021. And then the other half is in a separate GL that will be due at the end of 2022 so that clients can see these upcoming payments and know exactly how much they deferred.
Yeah, it'd be important for them to actually know that so they can make sure they're preparing for it by year end.
Absolutely. We've seen a lot with the deferrals coming out from clients that they think about it in, right now that I can defer money, but, that planning of when it needs to be paid back is super important. And, I hope that that's not a forgotten step.
Yeah, it should definitely not be forgotten. It will definitely catch people by surprise if they're not planning ahead on that.
Absolutely.
Lastly, will the deferred Social Security impact their federal income tax return?
It could affect some taxpayers' tax returns slightly. If you are if a taxpayer was a cash basis taxpayer, which means I can only claim expenses after I'd paid for something, you could have a reduction of your expenses because that deferred Social Security, it's employer Social Security, so that was an expense to the business and is on the income statement. But since it hasn't been paid, for a cash basis taxpayer, that would reduce the amount of deductible expenses that they had at the end of the year.
That does make sense. Well, I think that covers the majority of the questions that we had today. Brian, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate all of the information that you provide to us.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.